Hi, welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk, this Tuesday edition of Focal Point AFR Talk. I'm going to throw some, this will be kind of a lightning round. I've got a lot of information I want to give you. We'll start into the sound bites from the debate last night by the end of this segment. And we'll take your phone calls, 888-589-8840. Anything you want to talk about that we have talked about in this program today. Stuff that we have talked about, we're going to be talking about the debate. So if you watched the debate last night, you've got an observation, I would love to have you weigh in on that. I'll share some of my observations with you about the debate as we progress. Now, one of the things that I told you at the very beginning of Mitt Romney's candidacy is, look, once he got the nomination, look, evangelicals are not going to have to worry about letting the American people know what the Mormon Church believes and stands for, because the liberals are going to do it for us. And that is happening in spades. Washington Post, 3,800-word piece, trying to expose Mitt Romney basically as a puppet of the Mormon Church. That ran last weekend. Here are a group of atheists, American atheists, AA is the abbreviation. They, of course, are out to advance atheism and secularism. They are putting billboards up now in southern Florida that have this message on them about the Mormon Church: no blacks allowed, no gays allowed, shame on Mormonism. Referring to the fact that up until 1978, blacks were not allowed to serve in the priesthood in the Mormon Church. So the American atheists have got this billboard up in southern Florida. Now, liberals are also planning on the Sunday before the election, November 4, same day that National Geographic's going to run that movie about killing bin Laden. Of course, nothing incendiary, nothing inflammatory about a movie that's anti-Islam. We got nothing to worry about there. But that's going to air November 4. National Geographic says, we believe in freedom of speech. We're going to air it. And remember, the guy that produced that movie, the National Geographic movie on the killing of bin Laden, he is a big-time supporter of Barack Obama. In fact, he's raised more money for Barack Obama. No, that's Jeffrey Katzenberg from DreamWorks. But this Harvey Weinstein has raised a ton of money for Barack Obama. And he's showing this movie that will inflame the Muslim world, because Osama bin Laden, or as Harry Schaefer or Bob Schieffer referred to him last night, Obama bin Laden. Did you hear that? Bob Schieffer referred to him as Obama bin Laden in the middle of the debate last night. So we'll see if Barack Obama will arrest the producer of this incendiary, inflammatory movie about Islam. He'd have to arrest his own buddy who raised like millions of dollars for his campaign. But liberals, back to where I was going, liberals now are planning on the Sunday before, that's where I got off track, the Sunday before the election, they are planning to do literature drops in the parking lots of evangelical megachurches. They are going to put anti-Mormon flyers on the windshields of all these churches and all these evangelical megachurches all over the land. Now, I do not believe that criticism of somebody else's ideology is bigotry or hate. I don't think that for 1 minute. That's just being objective. That's just being rational. That's viewing things with an appropriately critical eye. So if we have objections to Mormon theology, there is absolutely no problem with verbalizing those and comparing them side by side with Orthodox Christianity. Absolutely nothing wrong with that at all. That's not bigotry. That's just honesty. That's just intellectual honesty. That's just thinking clearly about life. But on the left, they're the ones that are saying, hey, any criticism of Mormonism, that's bigotry. That's religious bigotry. Well, I said from the very beginning, if that is bigotry, then the liberals are the biggest bigots on the block, because they have more anti-Mormonism in their veins than anybody else. There's a Pew poll, this is back from April, but it found that 31% of Democrats would be less likely to support a candidate if he were a Mormon, compared to 23% of Republicans. So even back in April, 8% more Democrats had a problem with a Mormon candidate than Republicans. So if that's bigotry, then the Democrats are the biggest bigots on the block. In fact, this Pew poll found that the more liberal somebody was politically, the more anti-Mormon they were. 41% of self-identified liberal Democrats say they would be less likely to support a Mormon candidate. So 23% of Republicans say, hey, I got a hitch about voting for a Mormon. Got to be honest here because of my theological beliefs. I know they don't line up with Orthodox Christianity, so that's a hitch for me. But 41% of liberal Democrats say that is a no-go thing. And evangelicals, by the way, the latest information I've seen, about 74% of evangelicals are on board with Mitt Romney. They're going to vote for him. And, we've seen the stuff about Pew, about the number of Americans that do not have any religious affiliation. You probably saw those stories. 20% now of Americans are religiously unaffiliated. They're unaffiliated with a particular faith tradition. Now, the interesting thing is, according to Pew, they are also less likely to vote. So the more secular somebody is, the less likely they are to be an engaged, informed, and involved citizen. So that may not be that bad. If you have secularists that just don't bother to vote and evangelicals do, then they are ceding the field to voters who vote their values. Now, let me grab, there's another story in here that I wanted to take a look at, see if I can find that in here. Don't know where that is exactly. Oh, by the way, we've talked about this the bigotry, this anti-religious bigotry directed against Christians. Tufts University, this is a university with an impeccable reputation. Tufts University has banned a Christian student group. They banned them from campus because they embrace, quote, basic biblical truths of Christianity. They require their leaders to embrace, quote, basic biblical truths of Christianity. That's a requirement for leadership because it's an intervarsity Christian fellowship group. It's the Tufts Christian Fellowship, TCF. We're Christians here. So we believe that people that are leaders in our group ought to be Christians. This is the Tufts Christian Fellowship. You got the Muslim Student Association. They ought to be able to select Muslims for their leaders. And the Tufts Christian Fellowship would say, we're down with that. We're fine. It's their organization. They ought to be able to have whatever standards they want for their leaders. You got an atheist organization, then they ought to be able to have atheists in their leadership. So everybody gets to choose the leaders they want except for the Christian group. And this group gets kicked off campus. So this is the only group that is not allowed to select leaders based on their own criteria. The Muslims can discriminate against the Christians, against the Jews, against the Buddhists, against the Hindus and their leadership choices. That's fine. They can discriminate all they want, and that's fine with Tufts University. The atheists can discriminate against the Muslims, against the Christians, against the Jews, against the Hindus, against the Buddhists, and they're just fine with that. So the only group that is not allowed to select leaders based on their own criteria is the Tufts Christian Fellowship. So that means they can't use the Tufts name for campus activities. They can't schedule events or reserve space through the Office for Campus Life, and they can't get any money from the school for their events. So religious bigotry continues. Now let's jump into the sound bites, and we can shift gears here a little bit now, Rob. The first soundbite I want to